Welcome to another FPL video. We're looking ahead to Game Week 8 and we're going to be rating your teams. Now there's going to be a separate video focusing on your wildcards, so don't worry about that. So today we have 11 teams which are non-wildcards, and then in that future video that I discussed there will be another 11 teams, but that will be focused purely on wildcards. So without further ado, let's head straight into the video. So the first team is sent in by Abdo Mata, and it's actually a very impressive team. So he's got Sanchez in goal, who's looking good for the next few game weeks. Long term, I would prefer Raya, Ramsdale, and possibly even Jose Sa. But for the time being, Sanchez is fine. But maybe in the future, obviously, one of those, 4.6 million goalkeepers like Ramsdale or Raya, you could go for them. I really like the defense. I think it's probably one of the best sets of defenders you can get, with Cancelo, Rudiger, and Trent. That's probably the ideal one that I'm looking for, and possibly with another really good option to add to that. And the midfield, I like Rafinha and Salah a lot. That's kind of a no-brainer. Salah captain is a very wise choice. Jota is an injury concern now since he sent in this team, and he is someone that I probably would look to get rid of, especially if he is out. So you could maybe go to an Mbeumo or an Everton midfielder instead. And I'd say even the same thing goes for Benrahma, because you already have Antonio, and if you want to keep him, having double West Ham attack during these difficult fixtures, of course they can still do well, but maybe you could get more points elsewhere. So I think Jota and Benrahma, probably two of the players on your team that could be on the chopping block. Your attack though is really good. Even though Antonio and West Ham have some tough fixtures, I think it's worth keeping him. And of course, Jimenez has good fixtures up until Game Week 14. Similar Lukaku, who could be a really good captaincy shout for the next 3 or 4. So I really like that. Ben White as your kind of 4th, 5th defender is really good. Livramento as well, so nothing to complain about there. And Brownhill, 4.4 million, saves you that extra 0.1 million compared to the other 4.5 million choices you have. So overall, really good team. Just maybe a goalkeeper transfer later down the line, and possibly Jota and Benrahma out for some of those midfielders we discussed, not just in this video, but in the previous live streams and videos. The next team is sent in by Bernardinho, aka FPL Dino, and there are some similarities with Abdo Mata's team. And once again with Sanchez, I think later down the line you could make a goalkeeper transfer there, but it's not something I prioritise because Brighton have a reasonably good defence. I like the double Chelsea. Arguably long term, you're looking up until Game Week 25 onwards. You'd probably rather have Cancelo and Diaz over Azpilicueta and Rudiger, but I think up until Game Week 14 makes complete sense to have, the Chelsea duo instead. And getting Diaz in for Marcel, that's what he said. He wants a bit more flexibility in terms of his budget, because he could actually do Williams to Diaz, but he wants a bit more money extra in the bank, which is completely fair enough. But even then, I would rather have a better option coming off the bench than Williams, maybe Duffy even. And then when you do make a goalkeeper transfer, then you can have that Brighton cover in the defence. So that's one thing I could say to improve this team. And with the midfield, once again, the same thing goes for Jota. He could be someone you can replace with Mbeumo, especially because you don't have Ivan Toney. I think Mbeumo could be really good cover for Brentford from Game Weeks 10 to 12 when they have fantastic fixtures, facing 3 of the worst defensive teams this season. And one thing to note is that Rafinha actually came on against Venezuela and Brazil won 3-1. They turned the game around, and what I'm suspecting could happen is that Rafinha actually is going to be a key part in the second and third game for Brazil, and they actually face Uruguay towards the end before the international break ends. So I just find it really difficult to see Rafinha starting against Southampton, despite what Leeds United have come out already and said. So this is something that we could still, or that we should monitor, and Rafinha could actually be a bit of a doubt heading into Game Week 8. So keep an eye on that. But still, obviously, I'd keep him long term. He's a really good choice. And Gallagher, one of the better options around that price. And he's got the fixtures. His underlying stats have dipped a bit, but it's still a good choice nonetheless. Sissoko hasn't really been doing it, but even then, the 4.5 million options, we're not getting too much value from them. But of course, Allen, and then you have Douglas Luiz, they're the ones standing out. As for your attack, I think a clear way to improve it is to move Ronaldo on to Jamie Vardy or Romelu Lukaku. It's up to you who you go for. I think over the next 4 game weeks, it makes sense to go for Lukaku because of the fixtures. And of course, he did really well against France despite Belgium's capitulation in the Nations League. Antonio, once again, I think he's a good choice despite the tough fixtures. And once again with Bamford, probably keep an eye on that injury situation, but you could easily move him down to Ivan Toney or Jimenez, and if not, maybe even Hwang. So one of those three options could be good replacements if needed for Bamford. And you already have Rafinha anyway to cover, especially when he's back. So I think overall it's a good team, but Sanchez maybe to another goalkeeper, maybe Duffy in for Williams, and obviously you still have that flexibility in the bank. And then with your midfield, probably move Jota on for one of those cheaper options from Everton or Mbuemo. And then once again with the attack, probably Ronaldo to Lukaku or Vardy, and then Bamford, he could also make way for Jimenez, Hwang or Ivan Toney. This team is sent in by John Granquist. It's his first season playing FPL, and it's a pretty good team as well. And there's some interesting choices here. Now, McCarthy, someone I haven't discussed too much, but with Southampton's fixtures, and Southampton have been good defensively, he could actually be a really good choice. So I like that. And of course, if it doesn't go right, then you could always go for Raya or Ramsdale, as I keep on saying. And as for the defence, obviously, Cancelo and Rudiger, big fan of those selections. Kieran Tierney, not so much. I'd rather have Ben White. I think he could match or if not outscore Tierney in terms of bonus points. Of course, Kieran Tierney's always got that attacking potential over Ben White, but I think he can save some money there, especially if you want to upgrade other areas of the team. Now, I like the defence, but Tsimikas, of course, he isn't going to be playing anymore, so you could move him on to Duffy, or if not Ben White, and then Kieran Tierney maybe to another Chelsea or City defender. Now, how would you fund that? I'd definitely move Schmeichel down to a 4 million keeper like Ben Foster and get that extra money into the bank. I like the midfield. I'm not a big fan of Saka, and I don't think he's going to be that consistent of an FPL asset, but once again, Salah and Rafinha, I think, are two of the best midfielders, especially in terms of value. And Zaha, he has been doing well, but I'm still a bit hesitant about him. And Palace have so many options with Michael Olise. They've got obviously Eze when he's going to come back, Gallagher and Zaha. So I think the goals are going to be shared for Palace, and they're also a very inconsistent team. And of course, we have Edouard up front. But I still like the midfield, but I probably would move Zaha on, give Saka a bit of a run, see how he does. But if not, once again, you can get Townsend, Doucouré or Gray in for one of those midfielders, and also Mbuemo. And another thing you can do is move, say, Maximan on to Hwang, or if not Ivan Toney. I think that could be a really good move for you. And then Antonio I think is fine, and even Jamie Vardy, even though you don't have Lukaku, and he could be a really good captaincy shout this week, and also for the next 3 or 4, I think you can do just fine with Jamie Vardy. And I think the rest is pretty much fine. Obviously you do have Benrahma as well, so you've got a strong midfield, but I think possibly you could make a few changes here and there. You don't have to get rid of Benrahma, of course, but if you do have Antonio already, I don't think you necessarily need Benrahma. But overall, really good squad. I'd just be looking to downgrade Schmeichel, use that money to upgrade your defence, and make a few changes in your attack and midfield, but a really solid team. There are some similarities between all of these teams, but there are also some key differences which kind of differentiate every single one of these. So we've got Ramsdale in goal here, and I think he's one of the best goalkeeper options in the long term, so long as he can maintain that starting berth. Then I look at the defence. I like it a lot with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Ben White, very good value at the moment with some good fixtures long term, and of course Rudiger. The big problem here potentially could be Marcos Alonso, and if you do have an extra free transfer available, I think you could move him on, even just to another Chelsea defender, or Joao Cancelo or Diaz. I think any of them would be fine. And they're all good choices regardless. Of course, Alonso, what he's going to do is that when he does start, he's going to offer you some explosive potential. He can get those assists, even goals and bonus points. So, of course, he's always a good option when he plays. The problem is that from now on, I think his minutes are going to be shared with Ben Chilwell, especially when the fixture run for Chelsea is going to be congested and Tuchel has to rotate even more so. Livramento, of course, once again, very happy with that. And you've got Foster in there, which is fine. And now we look at the midfield. Very interesting here again. Salah and Rafinha, nothing wrong with that. Very good choices. Two of the best in my opinion. Saka, not completely sold on him, but he can do well for you over the next few. And of course, as I keep on saying with these midfielders around the cheap price bracket, you could go for Gallagher, an Everton midfielder, or Mbuemo if Saka doesn't do the business for you. And the same goes for Harrison. I think it probably is time to get rid of him. And same with Traore. I think you could make a shake-up here and there. I'd even rather have Ferran Torres, despite the rotation risk. I think he could outscore both of them. So just some key kind of components to bear in mind. And I still like this team a lot. Your attack, your front three, is one of the best you can assemble, I think, at this moment in time. With Jimenez up until Gameweek 14, really good fixtures. And then with Antonio, of course, I think he's kind of fixture-proof. And Lukaku is probably one of the best captaincy shouts behind Salah for the next 4 game weeks. So really good team overall. But I think Traore, Harrison, probably 2 weaknesses in there. And Marcos Alonso, he could be someone you could move on to a City or another Chelsea defender who's more nailed. This team is sent in by Laser, and he had a few kind of transfer plans that he wanted to say. So he said that next game week he would bring in Foden or Grealish in for Jota, and in game week 10, if Alonso's still not playing, he would then bring in Azpilicueta, and in game week 11, he would replace Sarr with either Mbeumo or Gallagher, but he's leaning more towards Mbeumo. Now, all of those seem like good transfers, and I still agree with them, but of course, if Jota is out, and of course he is facing Watford, it's a big shame, but if he's out, then it's obviously worth getting rid of him now for one of those City midfielders. And City, their record against Burnley is unbelievable, so I think it's a really good time to bring in even one of their midfielders as a punt, like Riyad Mahrez, Grealish, Torres, even Foden. So I think they're all very good choices. And as for the team that we see on screen, Sanchez, good keeper for the next few. Long term, I would argue there are better choices elsewhere, but the defence is exceptional once again with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo, and he's even got him as vice-captain. I don't think that's actually, too bad of a shout, but of course, with Salah facing Watford, I probably wouldn't go for Cancelo over him, and that's what Laser's done here. And Livramento, good choice once again. And then we look at Semedo. Look, he's got good fixtures up until game week 14, and because you have other kind of transfers already planned and you've got other things to do, then I'd say keep him for now. But of course, around game week 14, you could get rid of Semedo, probably for a player playing for a better defence who's going to keep more clean sheets and possibly even get more attacking returns. Semedo always kind of promises a lot, but doesn't really deliver. And the midfield, once again, Rafinha, Salah, I like that a lot. Jota, get rid of him, I'd say, for Mbeumo now, potentially, and have him ready for game week 10 to 12. Or if not, you can go for one of those City midfielders that you discussed. And I like Ivan Toney, Antonio and Lukaku. That's probably, I'd say, the best front three long term. Well, you could argue it could be Jamie Vardy instead of Lukaku, maybe Jimenez for Antonio, but I'd say three of those really good choices. And as for the rest of the midfield, Sarr, of course, you already discussed that you're going to be getting rid of him. I think those transfer plans make absolute sense, and I'd probably do that in this order, the one that you said, but probably prioritise getting rid of Jota right now. Now, this team is sent in by Marcos Chia, and he's thinking of doing 2 out of these 3 transfers from -4 hits. So he'd be doing Alonso to Cancelo, Traore to Saka, and Ronaldo to Lukaku. And I think they all make sense, and they're 3 of the players that I'd be saying you should prioritise getting rid of them first. Same with probably Ismaila Sarr, and probably Nelson Semedo further down the line. And honestly, I don't think Saka will necessarily pay off that hit instantly. I think Lukaku and Cancelo could give you big hauls immediately, and they're probably more reliable and consistent than Bukayo Saka. So I'd probably go for those 2 over Traore to Saka, despite the fact that I think Traore is the biggest weak link in this team because his end product is just not there pretty much. I like the goalkeeper, although I think there are better choices in the long term potentially, but Sanchez could still do a good job in my opinion. The defence is really good, and I think if you get Cancelo in for Alonso, you improve it even further, and you get that City coverage, which I think could be exceptional. The midfield is fine, but Sarr and Traore, I'd probably be looking to get rid of them. Semedo on your bench is good for now, but then just think about replacements going into the future. Allen is fine as well. Same with Williams, although I would rather have Livramento or Duffy. So if you ever have a free transfer to spare, I'd be looking to get one of them in for Williams. Then Foster is fine, to be honest. And as for your front three, it's still good. Ronaldo, you could maybe hold on to another week, but to be honest, I would probably just want to get Lukaku in as soon as possible. If not Jamie Vardy, I think both of them, up until game week 14 at least, will be better options than Cristiano Ronaldo. Some interesting plans and a team by Cherie. So he says that in game week 8, Mbeumo comes in for Sarr. Game week 9, Diaz for Marçal. And if price rises or falls, he will need to do a -4 as he has 0.0 million in the bank. And longer term thinking, in game week 12, sell Lukaku to get Son. Rather take a chance with James over Rudiger. So in my opinion, I would just keep it as Rudiger over Reece James. Obviously, he has the attacking potential, but Rudiger is just that kind of set and forget defender. I like your defence. I like the goalkeeper. I think he's a very good long-term pick. And the midfield looks really good. But in my opinion, Kovacic just isn't really, I'd say, a sustainable FPL option. Like, he can continue to do well. And of course, around his price for the midfielders, he's one of the better options, probably around or along with Curtis Jones, but I'd still probably move him on. I think what I would do with your team instead is downgrade Ronaldo to Jamie Vardy, or potentially to Raul Jimenez or a cheaper striker, some of the ones I discussed before, like Ivan Toney or Hwang. What that would do is give you a lot of money in the bank to, for example, do Marçal to Diaz or Cancelo. At this moment in time, I would prefer Cancelo in my opinion. And you could do Sarr to Son that way, but obviously it depends how you want to go about it. If you want Jimmy Vardy, just get him in and then maybe upgrade your defence. And if not, I would then upgrade your midfield as well and get Heung-min Son. I think that would definitely improve things. And I'd probably get Mbeumo in for Kovacic. If not, you could get Gallagher or Bukayo Saka, for example, but I probably would prefer Mbeumo, especially because you probably won't end up with Ivan Toney. So you get that Brentford cover in the attack, and I think that could be a really good team overall. Obviously, Basuma, let's wait and see what happens with him, of course. I think he has been charged, so he might be obviously a doubt longer term, and you could always replace him with another kind of 4.5, 4.4 million option. Depends what you want to do. If you want someone who's just going to be cheap, go for Brownhill, and if not, maybe Douglas Luiz or Allen would be the best around their price. And I also would recommend getting one of those defenders like Ben White, Duffy or Livramento in for Williams, but obviously you already have Livramento, so Ben White or Duffy, but the rest looks really good, and it's a really good team overall. On screen we have Simon's team, a long-time viewer of this channel, so thank you very much, and it's a really good team overall, and he actually offered some of his kind of plans with this team, and he actually has 2.1 million in the bank. So what he was thinking of was doing Chilwell or Rudiger to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and if not, Saka to Foden. And I think both are good transfer options, but I'd definitely keep Rudiger. And in my opinion, what I would do with that money is do Chilwell to Trent. I think that's a no-brainer. With Chilwell, we just don't know if he's going to be playing the majority of the games. I think Tuchel is going to be pretty much what he's been doing for the whole time since he's been at Chelsea, and kind of rotate between those two left backs, and in half the games it'll be Alonso and in the other half it'll be Ben Chilwell, and we just don't know what's going to happen there. The Juventus game just put everything wide open when Alonso got subbed off at half time, so I think I would personally steer clear, despite obviously the attacking potential they offer, but you can get Trent Alexander-Arnold, cover Liverpool defence, and of course he has better attacking threat than both of them pretty much, so I think it's a worthwhile upgrade. And Bukayo Saka, just like you rightly point out, he's probably the other player I'd have a few doubts about, and I'd actually even prefer having either Townsend or Damari Gray instead of Bukayo Saka. And of course, around Game Week 10 you were saying you could potentially downgrade Antonio, for example, to Ivan Toney, and that will give you enough money to upgrade Bukayo Saka potentially, maybe to a Phil Foden, and I would definitely endorse that. I would rather have Foden over Saka despite the rotation risk, and I think Ivan Toney could be a very good move up front. So I agree with all your transfer plans, but for me it's very simple. Move Ben Chilwell on for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Here is Stephen Moore's team, and he already has some transfer plans that he is kind of contemplating. So at the moment he's thinking of Ronaldo to Lukaku in Game Week 8, Jota to Grealish or Foden in Game Week 9, and Antonio to Toney in Game Week 10, then possibly Sarr to Zaha in Game Week 11. Now, I think they're all good transfer plans. What I'd probably say is potentially he could, or you could make that move, I'd say in the midfield first. So get rid of Jota, especially if he is out, and then maybe get Lukaku in ahead of Game Week 9 when he plays Norwich and has those really good fixtures, which is where you probably want him for, because he does face Brentford in Game Week 8, and that's not really, in my opinion, the easiest fixture. And I agree with the rest, even though obviously I'd be a bit hesitant about getting rid of Antonio. Toney is a good choice, especially around Game Week 10 to 12, and he's got good fixtures up until Game Week 19. I'm a bit concerned about Sarr to Zaha. Obviously Zaha has been doing well this season, but I probably would avoid him, and maybe you would say it's a bit of a bias I have there, but he's just not someone that I'd be too confident about in the long term, so I'd rather go for other players like the Everton midfielders, like Mbeumo instead. But I think they're all good transfer plans. I just reconsider potentially the kind of order, so maybe get that midfielder in first, especially when City face Burnley, although once again with Grealish and Foden, maybe long term you might not be too sure about them, and they might not start the majority of the games, especially in Foden's case, and maybe their goal output will be a bit inconsistent because Manchester City have so many good options. So it's something to consider, but I still think they could be really good options, especially in Game Week 8. This team is sent in by Sidhindra, and there are a few, I'd say, kind of easy transfers to make. So we have Luke Shaw on the bench. I think he's definitely an easy sell, and I'm not sure how much you have in terms of money in the bank, but I would move him on potentially to a City defender if possible. So Cancelo or Diaz, take your pick there. I'd rather go for Cancelo at the moment because he's nailed. Of course, that could change going into the future. I like the rest of your defence, even your goalkeeper, but because you already have Duffy, you could maybe in the future make a goalkeeper transfer and get Raya or Ramsdale, but it's still fine. Your midfield is solid, but once again, I probably would be looking to move Sarr on, and you could get, once again, probably Mbuemo. That's what I would do. And then Ronaldo, I actually would move him on to Jamie Vardy if possible. And if not, you can make 2 free transfers, downgrade Ronaldo to Tony, and then maybe get Son in for Sarr. So it's up to you how you want to go about it. You either get Son or Vardy, and then the other one would be Mbuemo or Tony. But that's what I would do with your team. And Luke Shaw is definitely someone to get rid of, in my opinion. Cody can be fine up until Game Week 14. Beyond that, that's when you could look to maybe get rid of him. Maybe for a Livramento, for example. So those are the transfers I would make. Later down the line, possibly Sanchez. Definitely Luke Shaw I would get rid of for a City defender. And then Sarr and Ronaldo. You can get either Son or Vardy. And if not, one of the kind of Brentford attackers or midfielders. A recurring theme for a lot of these kind of non-wildcard teams is Sanchez in goal, and once again I made my feelings clear about him. I still think he's a good option for the next few game weeks, and with the defence I like it, but I probably would move on Marcos Alonso to a City defender like Cancelo or Diaz. Once again I'd go for Cancelo, and you've got double City midfield, and I would keep that for sure ahead of Game Week 8, but long term I would move one of them on, probably for Mbuemo, or if not for Townsend or Damari Gray. So that's what I would do. Salah and Rafinha, that's definitely fine. No need to change that. And looking at your attack, that's perfectly reasonable. I probably wouldn't change anything as of yet. Obviously, Jamie Vardy is someone to heavily consider over Lukaku, but I'd probably make that move in 4 or 5 game weeks' time if you don't just have that kind of Ronaldo Game Week 15 transfer penciled in already. And then looking at the rest, you've got Marcel, once again, good up until Game Week 14. Then you could possibly get rid of him. And I would improve on Williams. I'd probably get Livramento if possible. And if not, you can always get Duffy, especially if you want to cover Brighton defence. So that's what I would do with this team. I think it's really good. But one of the City midfielders I'd change. I'd get Cancelo or Diaz in for Alonso. And the rest is pretty reasonable. But I'd probably get Livramento or Duffy in for Williams. So that's it. We've gone over 11 teams, non-wildcard teams, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for your wildcards. So thank you very much to everyone who sent them in. Apologies if, it didn't feature, but there was kind of a window and so many people sent in their teams and it's impossible to, have every single one of them feature. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. And obviously, once again, massive thank you to everyone who's subscribed to the channel, who's liked the videos, who's shared it. And also, those who have become channel members, we've got 5 now, so really appreciate all of you who have joined, especially in the last few live streams, and also for all the super chats. Obviously, massively appreciate you don't have to do that. And good luck with Game Week 8. Obviously, enjoy the international break. We still have plenty of time up until the deadline, but try to, I'd say, have a clear idea about what you want to do, not just for Game Week 8, but also looking further ahead. And I think it will help you plan your team and be in a good position to get the rank you want. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.